Donc, human Pritchett, Josh J. Good morning, fellow Trekkies. This is Josh Pritchett of moversandshakers.org, and I am joined by, as usual, my co-host.
Bienvenidos a todos nuestros amables oyentes. Good morning, everyone. Bonjour, guten morgen, truland true. I am Chris Pabon. We are here with Movers and Shakers Rediscovering the Federation to talk about the most recent episode. And I want to let all of you know, and Josh, that today I plan to crank it up to 12.
Oh, dear. Oh, my. Okay. Yeah. Chris, you and I were talking beforehand, and I realized you had a lot of thoughts, a lot of passion about this particular episode. So, without further ado, let's dive into the events of this week's episode. So, our crew has reached the hypersphere in which the 10C live in, and they are trying to find a way inside. What they end up doing is sending out several bots with the pheromones to spray them around to with the pheromone that is of peace or just a positive one to get the 10C's attention. Well, it works. The 10C drag them into the hypersphere. Meanwhile, Book and Tarka are still cloaked and hiding on Discovery's hull with Chief Engineer Reno as their hostage. And during this time, Reno, of course, is not being idle. She is trying to find a way to escape. And we discover that she has managed to smuggle part of her communicator on board with her and is trying to rig it so that she can send a message to Discovery. Chris?
So, in an homage to, I guess, sort of like guess who's coming to dinner. In this case, Reno has come to dinner, and I love the fact that she's using science to try to get out of this, as she is continually asking Book for licorice, and we're not quite sure why. We find out towards the end of the episode, but there's a reason why she's doing this in conjunction with the communicator that she stowed away. Meanwhile, the crew is struggling to communicate with the 10C, and finally there's a gathering of all the delegates except one, and we'll talk about that in our next segment in the hangar bay. And through trial and error and some different perspective, they figure out that the pheromones have to be used in coordination with the lights that are being emitted by the 10C, which, by the way, we never actually see. And I did like this a lot because I don't think we always have to see who the character is. I mean, it's sort of like behind a red cloud, if you will, with the interpretation being that perhaps it is so large and so vast that it would overwhelm our senses or just can't enter into the ship. But I like the fact that we don't actually see the 10C. And so they get this message and they figure out that they need some different perspective than what they have in the bridge. So they call down the bridge crew, and the bridge crew lends them the outside perspective needed to figure out that you have to use in combination the pheromones with the lights, and it's a mathematical equation. And so at first they thought they could just repeat the message verbatim or pheromone-like, if you will, and the 10C go away, and they realize that it's not enough. Communication is not enough to just repeat what you've heard. And the reference is made that we could come across like a monkey with a rock, of that we're just repeating what we hear. That to display true intelligence, you have to be able to interpret and communicate back. And so the 10C at first goes away, but once they figure out this is a mathematical equation, then they come up with the number 9, and then they send that message back, and the 10C then comes back, and not only do they come back, but but they send a sphere, much smaller sphere. And so then there's debate about who should go on it. And the minute that the elected people go on, which is Saru, Captain Burnham, President Tarina, and the President of the Federation, they walk into it, and it's the bridge of discovery. And they realize that, they have created an environment, that being the 10C, where they feel that we will be most comfortable communicating with them. And so communication is on. Josh?
Meanwhile, back on Book's ship, Reno manages to have a heart-to-heart with Book. She's been observing Tarkin and realizes that Tarkin's mathematical equations that he is using will actually harm the 10C, will actually put Discovery in a great deal of danger. And what Reno says to Book basically is, she tells him the story about an ensign that she was trying to save during the while she was trapped on that ship during the Klingon War. And even though the ensign was in so much pain and begged her to let him pass away, Reno wouldn't do it. And she later realized why she couldn't just let this guy go. It was because Reno realized this ensign had the same color of eyes that her late wife had had. And that had really shaken her. And so what she basically tells Book is, Book, you are comparing, you are seeing this good side of Tarkin that's not really there because he suffered a great loss like you have. You're empathizing with the wrong person. And she tries to explain his math is not, he's lying about his math. He's still trying to go for the power source. He's not trying to get them free. It's basically, it's a scam. He's scamming Book. And unfortunately, when Book tries to confront him, Tarkin has already rigged his own personal defense system on board the ship so that Book cannot do anything to him, and ends up throwing him into the cell with Reno, and then ejects a massive burst of plasma at the inside of the 10C's hypersphere, which causes the DMA to become unstable and ejects a massive toxic cloud that is heading towards Earth, while Tarkin is stealing the power source for his ultimate goal, which is, of course, to rejoin his friend in the other universe. So that's what happens there. And right as that is going on, Michael and the rest of the First Contact team are sent back to Discovery. And it is apparently that, they've all realized that they've been had at this point. And also another thing to note, we were talking about this last week, was the blind spot that Tarkin had developed to put inside of Zora's sensors. When Zora starts to realize she is feeling off about something's bothering her, they begin looking around and they find this device that Tarkin put in to mess up her sensors, and then also find part of Reno's communicator and realize what is going on, but it's too late by then. So, Chris?
Yeah. Tarka goes out with Book's ship, and then you met with Michael Burnham realizing in a spiral that everything she feared of her not being able to be in control is happening because Book was there. And the message from Reno says that his efforts will not only very probably destroy them, but it'll probably end up destroying Earth as well, as Tarka, who doesn't really care, when he deactivates the device, that will cause the DMA to self-implode and create a massive void that will actually swallow up Earth, but he doesn't care so much because he says, well, they have a month. So with that said, Let's move on to let's fly and move on to things that we liked and we disliked.
Okay. I'm going to the thing I liked. One of the things I liked. Uh, the biggest thing I liked was Reno's heart to heart with Book. Tig Navarra is a real gem and a real treasure to the whole Star Trek universe with her portrayal of this character Reno. Even though she has said she was never a Star Trek fan or anything, she has fit so well into this universe, and she brings so much to this character and to her acting style and her ability to make you believe the story she tells about her late wife and trying to save this ensign. And she plays it so well. She doesn't overact. She really makes you believe she's doing this. The other big thing I liked was the scene where they brought the other crew members in to add their perspectives. As I've been saying all year, and I know I've driven probably everybody on this channel nuts about this, I like when they're using all the other characters, when they're using Detmer and Reese and all the rest, and because that gives them something to do. It gives the actors something to do. It makes it worthwhile for them to come into work every day and to, they're not just saying yes ma'am and doing all these, technobabble things. They're actually bringing something of themselves to these characters, and I know they've got to really be enjoying that. I think that overall I was, I thought there was a lot there that I had liked. I know that there are some things you want to talk about with this, so I'm going to turn it back over to you, Chris. I know you wanted to say a lot here, so.
Oh boy, Josh.
Yeah, I'm hanging out here. Put my seatbelt on.
Yeah, that's right. Fasten the seatbelt because it's going to be a fast and furious ride. Where to start? So I was torn because I was in a moment of peace and tranquility, thinking to myself, well, what should Book be more guilty of and thrown into a Federation slammer for endangering the entire Federation through his reckless actions, or for being so naive enough to trust Tarka yet again and expect a different outcome. I mean, someone get this man a copy of Aesop's Fables, or at the very least get him a copy of The Tale of the Scorpion and the Turtle, because he already saw that Tarka was going to do this when Tarka fires the photon torpedoes at the DMA the first time and makes things absolutely worse. And at that key moment, as we discussed before, he had a moment of brilliance and like, I need to dump this guy on a planet that has no electricity where he can do the least amount of harm. But no, he trusts him again. And because of his actions, he is not only about to endanger the 10C by imploding the sphere. Not only is he endangering his friends on Discovery, despite Tarka saying they'll have a few minutes to escape. No, he is endangering the entire Federation, because if Navarre and especially Earth get consumed in a massive void where he is saying, well, it's be okay because I'll have a month to evacuate, it's going to totally destroy the Federation. And so, because of Book's actions, and because we're near the end of the season, Josh, I have decided that for this season of Discovery, I am awarding, on behalf of Rediscovering the Federation, the Jar Jar Binks Award for Cluelessness to Cleveland Book for his actions. Congratulations, Cleveland Book. You are the first recipient of our Jar Jar Binks award. Book. Oh my God. The Tribble has more common sense than you do. Before I go on here, Josh, I'm going to give you the chance to rebuttal in defense of Cleveland Book.
Okay, well, yeah, he is very naive. You would think a guy who survived the the emerald chain by the skin of his teeth, but certainly he's a guy that is not. He's not a he's not a very ruthless person, as we found out. Um he gave Michael a chance when she first got to the 32nd century. He, I think that's one of his strong suits. I think, yeah, he was very naive, and he's guilty of being naive and just doing something so stupid as trusting Tarkin's somebody else. Tarka, because Tarka has not delivered the goods. He's oversold himself. He's, the one time he is telling the truth, of course, obviously, I just, is Oros, and that's a standard thing with a lot of con men. Not that I know a lot of con men, obviously, but what I've heard about with con artists is that, if all else fails, tell the truth, give them some truth, and that gets them back on your side. I think he is definitely playing Book's personal tragedy against him. I don't think Tarkin is necessarily lying when he says to Book, "I'm really sorry about this. You were my only other friend." Because I don't think Tarkin has been a man that has ever really been able to empathize. That's why I keep saying, and we're going to get more into this in a few minutes, but I keep calling Tarkin the Sheldon of the Star Trek universe, and people might think I'm being funny, but there are some very noticeable characteristics between both Sheldon and Tarkin. Is that they have if they have any friends at all, there's a very small number of friends. In a normal situation, I would imagine Tarka is a very socially awkward man. He has a lot of contempt. Both of them have contempt for people that they can regard as less smarter than they are, and think that they are the smartest person in the room at all times, even though, no, there's always a penny who's always smarter, obviously, about some things. So, and he can conceive of his needs and maybe the needs of his friends. But even though he can imagine a vast, infinite universe out there, he cannot empathize with a vast, infinite number of people, or even 4 people or 5 people. He can't do that. It's just not in his makeup, and that's what makes him such a villain in a way. I do think that Book is coming from a position of sorrow and anguish and frustration that something about this thing needs to be done. He's been trying, though, the last few episodes to let diplomacy work, but that's out of love for Michael. That's not, he still wants to hold somebody responsible. Unfortunately, Book has realized too late that Tarkin has lied to him again. And that's why he's getting the Jar Jar Award now. So the only other thing I disliked about this episode was the part in Saru's hair. I didn't like that at all. No, I'm kidding. But I think as a writer myself, I recognize you have to have a certain amount of drama, but you also have to deal with the fact that, okay, there's such a thing as fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And obviously Book keeps walking into this when it comes to Tarka and his promises. But there's a lot of very smart people that, get manipulated into things, and, they have a very hard time figuring out a way to get out of them. And they just sometimes, either they can walk away or double down. And unfortunately, Book decided to double down. So, okay. So, Chris, what else we got?
So I want to talk about what I'm calling the Susan Lucci moment of the episode. Yes, we have seen the delegates on board Discovery. And correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there a Ferengi leader among the delegates on Discovery?
You are correct, sir.
I believe there was.
There was.
Aren't all the delegates summoned to the bay to try to communicate with the 10C and interpret the message? Are they not? Yes,
and we're wondering where
So where is the
Ferengi
Ferengi
didn't know
leader?
where it went.
Yes, where does he go? Was he in the bathroom, a la Susan Lucci, when they were advised everyone's got to go down to the shuttle bay? And then he shows up in the room like, well, where is everybody? Well, I don't want to miss anyone because it's a big ship, so maybe I'll just stay in this room while all this important delegate responsibilities are happening down in the shuttle bay. How did we forget the Ferengi leader?
I want to say something, and I'm going to go into some. Yeah, I want to throw something out here about this is something I did not like about the episode, and I agree with you on this. As I have said repeatedly about making sure all the characters have something to do, this is one time that they otherwise have been doing a great job of this, have fumbled the ball. We didn't provide something for the Ferengi character to do. We didn't get to know this person's name. I'm not even sure of the Ferengi's particular gender in this case. It would be nice if we knew more about the character, had given the character some lines. But the other frustrating thing I have with this is, and this is a Michael Dorn thing. If I could just diverge to Picard, one of the reasons that we did not see Worf show up in Picard, even though they had written a scene for him, was because Michael did not want to go in, spend 3 hours of putting that makeup on, and then just sitting on the view screen for 10 minutes. He didn't want to do that. He wanted to actually have a scene where he was interacting with Patrick Stewart, and he wanted a bigger part. And I don't blame him, because another problem you have is when you go to all that trouble of making the makeup, of making those masks and molding it to this person's head, it's with the intention that this character is going to, do something. I mean, I know there were all these background characters, alien characters in Deep Space Nine, but most of them were wearing pullover masks. This person actually had, I don't know the actor's name, but this person actually had a mask that they could act in, that they could move their facial muscles in and out. Sorry, I'm not making fun of anybody, but I'm just trying to say that you do this. And I know from my own experience making masks, it's a lot of time and effort, and you have to do something with that. And I feel like it's unfortunate that they did not have that character in that scene so we could actually see them finally get to say some lines and introduce themselves, and we get to know this person's name. Ever since I saw the Ferengi in the commercial, I was like, oh, cool, there's going to be a Ferengi in this. And, just massive failure right there. Just that sucked. Okay. That was I didn't like that part.
So I'm going to go back to my book drum here, just because you mentioned Picard. And I'm going to go back to one of my favorite moments from Star Trek First Contact, when the Alfred Woodard character looks at Picard and says, Jean-Luc, blow up the damn ship. So this is why I'm saying this. When Book and Tig Notaro's character, Janet Reno, are locked up together, Book has enough access to the ship to provide her with a means to communicate with Discovery by lowering the shields or whatever is impeding communication. So if you're trapped in there and you know that Tark is hell-bent for leather on doing something that's going to destroy worlds and the Federation, isn't it then and there that you say, okay, enough is enough, and you activate the self-destruct? Because of all the systems that Tark has invaded, self-destruct is probably the one that's the most protected. So if you have access to provide Reno with a means to communicate to Discovery, then you should be able to activate the self-destruct. And it's not even a moment of hesitation. You activate the self-destruct.
Yeah, I think that you've got a point there, that he should have been more proactive in that regard. Unfortunately, I think you also have to deal with the fact that maybe he just doesn't want to die at that point. And that I think, I'm not defending. He certainly has done his share of silly things this year, but at the same time, it's still a show. We still have one more episode to do. I think that a much worse fate awaits our man Tarka. Sorry, I don't know why I keep calling him that. That he is that is awaiting him after this 13th episode. Unfortunately, I think he's going to drag Book down with him. We just hope our chief engineer, Reno, manages to get away in time, and that Discovery lives to fight another day. But, I think that now is a good time. We should talk about Tarka in our pantheon of Star Trek villains throughout history. And certainly Star Trek has not lacked for excellent villains. I would say in some ways he is a little bit like Dukat in that, at least pre-Pa Wraith Dukat, in which he felt like, yeah, okay, maybe what I'm doing is morally reprehensible to the rest of the galaxy, but I'm doing it for a good reason, and someday everybody will thank me for this. That's how I think he sees himself, as being more of a Dukat, and also to a certain extent Khan, because Khan also believed, yeah, I mean, I might be doing some awful things here too, but eventually everyone's going to see I was right, and they're going to just praise me for it later. I don't think he is as one-dimensional as I'm now blanking on her name, the lady who ran the Emerald Chain last season, who I thought was a very one-dimensional villain compared to a Dukat or a Khan or even a Gowron, as far as villains went in the Star Trek mythos. Chris, what do you think of him?
I think that Tarka ranks really low on the Star Trek villains, not because of his capacity to do great evil, because he's about to destroy the Federation, but because his motivation is not really there. And I'll tell you why. Khan, who I consider the greatest Star Trek villain of all time, he at least ruled on Earth. He knew what it was like to rule. Gul Dukat, he was in charge of Bajor. Again, he knew what it was like to rule. They had a taste of the things that they had before, and they wanted back. Even Dr. Soren from Star Trek Generations, he wanted to go back to the Rift because he experienced what it was like to be in the Rift. Before he was yanked out by the tractor beam, like he got to experience the bliss of being in the Rift. Now let's go to Tarka. What does Tarka experience? He hasn't even gone to the place where his friend has been. He doesn't even know where his friend is. Yes, he had a brief moment of like a year of being with his friend, but he has no idea where he's going to. He's never been there. So unlike that, again, I think the best comparison was Dr. Soren. Dr. Soren knew what it was like to be in the Rift. Tarka doesn't. For all he knows, he's going to some place that's markedly even worse. What if the place where his friend is only carbon monoxide atmosphere and he can't live in it? So in terms of capacity of great evil, I think the Tarka definitely is up there. But in terms of motivation of like, why is he doing this? Like, has he experienced that thing that he is seeking? The answer is no. So in terms of motivation, I'm going to drop him down to the floor.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comparison. I mean, I don't think he is, I think if his motivations were something more pure, like, okay, the DMA destroyed my planet too, that would make him easier to relate to. Or if he had suffered a similar galactic-sized trauma that Book has suffered, that, hey, the Emerald Chain destroyed my home world. Let me help you do something so nobody else's home world ever gets destroyed again by this new, terrible, evil thing called the DMA. I could see that. I think he is a brilliant person. I think he's very smart, but he, again, lacks, like Khan, he lacks, and Dukat, he lacks empathy. He is not, yeah, you're right. He doesn't know really what's out there. He just knows that I want to go there. Well, what's there? I don't know, but it's got to be better than here. How do you know that? And he doesn't know that. And, excuse me. And frankly, I think that's what makes him a real danger to himself and to other people. Um, I think if the Starfleet admiral had really seen that, if he wasn't in such desperate times, like trying to find an alternative to dilithium powered uh, faster than light warp travel, he would have passed. He would have never brought Tarka into Starfleet. He would never have utilized a character like that. Um, because he talks a good game and he is smart, but he's not as smart as he thinks he is, and he just has a point where he just doesn't give a damn about anybody else. Um, there's something that I've been meaning to mention, and I might have mentioned this before about Tarkin. I think he is definitely from the same planet that we saw in the classic Trek episode Mirror Mirror, where they were a planet full of people that had an enormous amount of dilithium, but didn't want to give it to the Federation because they worried the Federation might use it to, kill other people. Okay, to be fair, there would be times that Starfleet would have to utilize the power they get from dilithium to fight a Klingon warship and kill Klingons or Romulans. And that's a fair assumption, but obviously Kirk was not going to steal their dilithium. We don't know what that planet went through in the 800 years between the time of Kirk and the burn. What happened there with them. So at some point they clearly went from being a planet of passionate pacifists to if Tarka is a representative of that, people who just don't care anymore. And I'm not saying that's everyone from that planet, but it could just be Tarka. But it would be interesting to find out more. I think it would be helpful if we found out more about Tarka's past than what we have so far this season. That might make him more fulfilling as a villain. I agree with you. He does not rank up there. Dukat, we had 7 seasons with that guy. And he went from this one character, we thought was just kind of a filler character in the pilot episode, to being the big E by the end of the series, to being just this, and in between, we thought he was going to actually become a good guy or something. And no, he was pretty much from beginning to end the bad guy. And there were times I think he did try to change, but I don't think it was ever very successful, and I don't think it ever took, because I think there's one thing about all Star Trek villains, all the good ones, that believe that, hey, whatever's good for me is good for everybody else, and I should be in charge. When Khan takes over the Enterprise in Space Seed, he says, if you serve me, I'll treat you all very well. And, even though he sees himself as their superior in every way, and that he's destined to rule this new Federation, clearly they know it's wrong. They're not going to help him. They're going to fight back, because that's what you do in this situation. You fight back against a greater evil. And again, same thing with Dukat. Dukat, tries to explain to people, whoever will listen for 5 minutes, that, hey, I was not that bad compared to my predecessors who ran Bajor. I was actually a pretty good guy. It's just all these Bajorans wouldn't see that. So I had to kill a lot of people, okay? So again, this lack of ability to empathize in a otherwise brilliant person who might think that their way is the best way to go is I think is a hallmark of Star Trek villains. They're not just, as Picard described it in the Drumhead, villains who twirl their mustaches are easy to spot. Those of us who come to us with good intentions are harder to spot. I'm sorry, I butchered that whole line, but villains who twirl their mustaches are easy to find. Those who come cloaked in good intentions are much harder. In that case, he was talking about a Starfleet admiral who was obsessed with the idea that there was a conspiracy between Starfleet officers and Romulans to destroy the Federation, a la Joseph McCarthy. And I think that was, again, that was a character that started out with good intentions, but clearly did a lot of damage.
So I want to touch upon something I thought was awesome and not awesome that you touched upon. I do think it's awesome that they give the bridge crew something to do. But what they gave them in this episode, I wasn't sure that was necessarily played to their strengths. And let me explain why. I mean, so they need outside perspective to help interpret the message from the 10C. They need some fresh thoughts. Where are the linguists? Were the linguists on the shuttle from Navarre that arrived late with the delegate from Navarre, and that's why President Tarina had to hop on? I mean, if they're prepping for a first contact, I mean, yes, they've got the doctor there, but wouldn't you have other expert linguists there? I mean, I get why fresh perspective, give them something to do, but really the bridge crew is who you're going to rely on for something so important? I mean, if they had brought the bridge crew in with 3 or 4 other linguists and then they shine, I would have been totally fine with that. But it's like, this mission is so important, and yet it seems you went there lacking the necessary personnel to ensure that this mission actually is a success. Where were the linguists? Again, I touched on this last week. Where were the xenobiologists or the xenomorphologists? Why is Burnham the most qualified one there? I mean, it just seems like the shuttles carrying all these people were really late. So that's one. And 2, my argument for why you should not have the captain, the first officer, together in a mission, I think was sort of validated here, because when Book's ship is about to break off by use of the reverse tractor beam, Rice is like, oh, Captain, yeah, Book's ship is here all along, and they're about to escape. I get it if you don't have weapons. The weapons have been disabled. But if Tarka can use a tractor beam to reverse tractor beam himself out, then your tractor beam is working too. So if you were the captain or the first officer, you might have said, all right, don't let him go, tractor beam immediately. But Rice is like, what am I going to do here? No, you tractor beam that ship. You do not let it get away. I would have said you fire on the ship, but you can't because the weapons have been disabled. But if his tractor beam is working, your tractor beam is working, and your ship is much bigger, you lock on with the tractor beam and you do not let him get away. So I am glad they gave the crew things to do, but I don't think necessarily the things they gave them to do were their strongest points and made them shine.
Well, again, in the real world, yeah, that would make sense. But, we still had another episode to go. So, I mean, just speaking personally, and I'm just empathizing with the writers here, because I've written a lot of stories, Chris, and I'm not saying that to be a Tarka here, but I'm saying this, that they had to have something to carry over into next week. And I think that that definitely comes off. It does make them look ridiculous, making something that's so basic as that, and trying to cover up, it's a heat of the moment situation. But I think that they need to, I think that that's happened. And it goes back to the old argument that Michael once made to Gene Roddenberry sometime in the second season of Next Generation, when it seemed like every time some tough guy alien showed up, the first guy slapped around was Worf. And Michael went to Gene and he said, Gene, why is it all these bad guys keep coming in here and just throwing me around? I mean, can I fight back? Gene said, well, Michael, we need to have somebody, we need to show that this alien is a real tough guy, and so you're the toughest guy on the ship, and so you need to take the bumps. And then Michael thought about this. Wait a minute, why don't they throw Data around? Data's like the strongest being in the universe, right? And Gene looked at him and said, Michael, get out of my office. So, I mean, yeah, it looks silly, but at the same time, it's kind of like we had to have something to keep the audience coming back for next week's episode. So nothing is perfect, but I do understand your point,
So one last thing is, I am guessing that facial recognition has been prohibited in the Federation, or at least on Star Trek Discovery, because Zora, who I want to talk about ever so briefly, and her transition to feeling more human, but she keeps on saying that Reno is in engineering, and we find out that her badge has been left in engineering. But does he not have cameras on board? Couldn't someone not say, okay, visually confirm that Reno is in engineering where you say she is? So I have to assume cameras have been outlawed, at least facial recognition, because he relies just on badges rather than using some type of facial system to verify that the person is actually there. And so I want to piggyback on this and saying that while it is awesome that Zora is self-evolving to becoming more human, but in becoming more human, part of being human is making mistakes. And I think here she made a mistake. I mean, she thought because the badge was there that Reno was there. Clearly she was not. And I think the consequence of this might be, well, I'll leave that for like our next segment. But yeah, I mean, can't you use some type of camera system to verify the person is there?
Yeah, that was definitely a big plot hole that you could have driven a Death Star through. Yeah, that why couldn't Zora just activate some sort of device, visual device of some type, like a camera, to say, wait a minute, I'm reading her standing right there over that grate, but she's not there. What's going on here? Why didn't they do that? And maybe that ties back to the fact that Tarka had put that gizmo, whatever it was, into her hard frame, and it was kind of glitching her. Maybe that was part of why she was feeling off. But a bigger question is, okay, when Dr. Culver, was like, okay, trying to call Reno and ask for her help, she wasn't responding. Why didn't Paul Stamets or Adara noticed that Reno wasn't around? What's going on? Why didn't they notice? That's another thing.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, even Stamets is saying, I've been looking for her all day for her to help me. I mean, I'm sure there's a roster with a schedule that says, okay, these are the people that are going to be in engineering, and you're in charge, so you can recall people even if it's their time off. And this is definitely crunch time. I mean, wouldn't Zora at the least reaches out to Dara for everything else, or reach out to Dara Stamets and say, hey, can you verify that Commander Reno is in engineering because he's not responding, but I sense he's there. Can you just tap her on the shoulder?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that everybody kind of forgot, didn't think to, visually, confirm that she's somewhere in the office. Of course, that whole thing with the comm badge being in somewhere, that's an old trick that goes back to TNG again. I think that, yeah, that is a plot hole. Why did anybody go check? Instead, you ran around for however long it was trying to find her, and then you realize, or that you're wondering where the heck she is, and then finally, oh my gosh, we just found her comm badge, and it's like, oh, okay. Instead of narrowing it down, it's like, okay, Zora's seeing Reno is in engineering. It's like, well, everybody else in engineering says, no, she's not. And then they take 5, look around, and then realize, oh, wait, her comm badge is underneath this grate. And, hey, we got a problem. Somebody's taken our chief engineer. We need to find her. What's going on here? And I think that was definitely a plot hole there. Which leads me to another thing is what's going to happen. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chris. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, again, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. Another thought I had was, okay, how come nobody noticed that the Earth General was running around and was hacking into the systems to give them some assistance? And Oh, that's another instance. Maybe the first, maybe it's a good thing that the chief engineer was abducted, because I'm sure Raina would have noticed this. I mean, she noticed that, oh, hey, the replica. Well, no, wait. Linus told her that, hey, the replicator is making steamed bananas. What's up with that? Why didn't anybody, notice? Oh yeah, something's off about the plasma vents or something. But I guess with everything else going on, there was a way to cover that up. I mean, how many times, something gone glitchy with our computers and we didn't notice it because, we're just not looking at it. But
So
I think we've nitpicked this a lot here. So
I want to say, just because you brought up Team Bananas, that I loved that homage to Star Trek Lower Decks. I'm a huge Star Trek Lower Decks fan, and the Steam Bananas was definitely an homage. But so I love that they managed to put that in. So yeah, that's the one thing a small thing, but one thing I really liked.
Yeah, I think that was a nice shout out to the gang at Lower Decks and Mike McManus and those wonderful people that are doing that. Looking forward to it returning later this summer, of course. So one thing I wanted to sort of talk about just very, very briefly before, and this is not necessarily Discovery, but this wonderful trailer that finally dropped. We've been waiting for a while now for Star Trek Strange New Worlds. What did you think of it?
A lot of horseback riding, but I liked it.
Well, it's Anson Mott. You knew at some point he was going to get on a horse again. Come on.
I liked it.
Yeah, I would only get nervous if like Kevin Costner and Sam, they came running down past him. A little homage to Yellowstone there, but I think that that was a pretty cool visual. I think it's definitely going to start at a position where, okay, Chris is going to be recovering from the events that happened in season 2 of Discovery and his own realization of what his future holds. This idea that, of course, you and I, being longtime Trekkies, knew this is the fate of Captain Pike and what was going to happen to him. And I'm sure that it's weighing heavily on his mind, but he also has his duty and his love of exploration that he can't give up. So I'm really excited about this. This is probably the biggest thing about 2022 that I'm really looking forward to is Strange New Worlds. Obi-Wan
Kenobi?
Well, okay. Obi-Wan Kenobi's a close second, and okay, Ms. Marvel, Moon Knight, She-Hulk, Echo, Thor: Love and Thunder, Doctor Strange, Multiverse. Yeah, okay, I'm looking forward to all that, but let's just say Strange New Worlds is in the top 1% there. So, okay, so as we're coming close to the end here, final thoughts and predictions for the season finale. Chris.
So I have a lot of faith in Commander Reno. Much less so, obviously, about Book, but a lot of faith in her.
Wait, and Chris, so, is this faith of the heart? You got faith of the heart.
Faith in the heart. I lost 50% of our viewers after I started singing. So the definition of a madman is a person who keeps on doing the same thing over and over, expecting a new result. In this case, Cleveland Book shooting his weapon at Tarka, and Tarka each time having the blast deflected by his personal force field. Janet Reno is no madman. She's neither a mad woman nor a mad person. So what I predict is that somehow she will get her hands on a weapon, and instead of firing at Tarka, she will fire either at the console, something Book should have done to begin with, or she will fire at a wall where a power conduit is. Because being an engineer, she will know where these are located, or Book can tell her where the power conduits are located, behind which bulk plate. And so C will be able to disable, at least temporarily, the ship by taking out the ship's controls, which is something Book did not think of.
Yeah,
And that will buy Discovery some time.
I think that is a very safe prediction. I think Reno is definitely going to be the person to step up to the plate here and bring an end to this madness. I think Discovery and Starfleet are going to have their hands full trying to save Earth and Navarre from this toxic waste coming from the DMA, and then trying to fix relations with the 10C and try to see if they can fix this. I don't know where it goes from there on that part. I think we are going to see what it is Dr. Colbert. This is really frustrating that so many characters have similar names. Is going to reveal what it was that he was concerned that he was trying to keep it down on the DL. It could be a very old villain returning, or it could be a new, very big villain. I would not mind if it's an old villain, just because I think there's a lot of things we have not answered. Like, where's the Dominion? Where are the Brain? Where are the Klingons? That sort of stuff. I think we need to kind of delve into that. Is there a possibility that maybe some of the events that are going on Discovery might tie into what's going on Picard right now? And I don't think that's likely, but you never know here. So we will definitely see. I'm looking forward to the season finale of this story arc, and see what's next for Michael and the crew, and also wondering, just because I'm curious, where Terrell and Saru's relationship goes next. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on here, so I don't think we'll answer it all this episode, this coming episode, but I think we will answer a lot of it over the next couple of years to come. So we will keep looking forward to that. So go ahead, Chris.
I think you're right. I think another thing we're going to see long term is we're going to see some much needed security and Discovery, and it'll be Commando Narn. Even if it's just someone to mirror what happens in the episode Mirror Mirror, to see when a little light goes on the console indicating that someone is tampering with the ship's controls, just like Tarka did, that or to go looking for a crew member when C is not showing up. I think we're going to see a chief of security come out of all of these events next season, and I think it is going to be Commando Narn. I think it'll be a natural fit. And then I also think, Josh, that we're going to still see a death before the end of this season. There's going to be a death at the end of the episode. I'm afraid it might be Janet Reno, because Tig Notaro is so busy. I'm just not sure if she has the time to keep on giving to Discovery. It might be Cleveland Book, as we discussed with the whole self-destruct. Maybe this is the ultimate redemption arc for his character, that he's going to sacrifice himself to save everyone. Next season will be about Michael's grief, and it'll also be about the new power couple, which I really am rooting for, which is President Tarina and Saru. But I don't know whom, but I think we're going to get a death in the next episode.
I think you're right. I think someone is going to sacrifice themselves to stop all this, to save the Federation, save Discovery, and everything. It'll be interesting to see who it is and what happens. But I do think this episode will also set up for season 5, which will probably be out sometime after Christmas next year, or towards the end of this year. It's hard to keep up with this right now, but we just know there will be a season 5 of Discovery, and we will be back then to talk about it. So, anyway, so I think we are coming to the end of the episode, and Chris, it's been really I think we've, I'm hoping, as far as the last minute theories go, we do see maybe a classic character, some version of a classic character return. Also, I don't know how Discovery might feel about that. Chris, any further thoughts before we go?
No further thoughts, but do you want to share with people the big event that's happening for us next week?
Oh, yes. Next week, Chris and I are going to GalaxyCon in Richmond, Virginia. It will be at the Greater Richmond Convention Center near the downtown area, near the MCV Hospital, and also within walking distance of Virginia Commonwealth University, my alma mater. Go Rams. So if anybody happens to see us down there, come on over, say hi to us.
We'll be live, baby. Live.
Yes. So we will probably be wrapping up the show there, and there's going to be a lot of great guests, including the big guy himself, Bill Shatner, fresh back from his adventures and the Amazon space rocket, it should be a lot of fun. So come on down if you're in the Virginia area. Like I said, it's downtown Richmond, and hope we'll see you there. And until then, I am Josh Pritchett at Josh Pritchett Jr. on Facebook. My short story collection, Bigfoot and Other Tales of the Supernatural, is still available on Amazon and Kindle. And if you have already bought a copy and want me to autograph it for you, I will be in Richmond next week. Just wandering around, so feel free to come by. Chris?
Thank you, Josh. My name is Chris Pabon. You can follow me at Verity Cosplay on Instagram. You will see the best and latest from Katsucon, from Fairfax Comic Con. And shout out again, you will see the latest from GalaxyCon, which is happening next week. Super excited because Josh and I have done the show from a distance all year. So finally, we get to break the streak, and we will be together. And I look forward to seeing as many of you who want to come up and say hello next week at GalaxyCon.
Okay, and on that note, I'm going to wish everybody and have a great week, everybody.
Peace and long life.
Bye.